Welcome. In this explainer, we're diving into a fascinating puzzle straight from the ancient Talmud. We're going to explore the incredible power of just a single, fleeting thought and how it can, change everything.
So here's the question we're wrestling with. Can just one wrong thought, for a split second, completely ruin an entire sacred ritual? It sounds kind of crazy, right? But we're about to dig right into that very idea.
So to do this, we're heading deep into the Talmud, specifically to a passage called Zevachim 41b. We're going to start with a couple of really powerful stories, and then see how they, almost like a detective story, lead us to this incredibly deep psychological insight. So let's jump in.
Okay, so we're actually not starting with dry legal stuff. Instead, we're kicking things off with two parables from the school of Rabbi Yishmael. And these stories use the idea of a king to explain something really profound about the bond between God and humanity.
So this first story, it's all about this close, affectionate bond. Picture this, a king is pretty upset with his most trusted servant. But, and this is the key, because he loves this servant so much, he kind of brushes the offense aside. He's not going to make a huge deal out of it, because that relationship is just too important. So what's the takeaway here? Well, the king, of course, is God. And that beloved servant? That's the entire community. The whole point is that God's affection is so immense that even when the community messes up, the way the ritual to fix it is described is gentle. It doesn't harp on the mistake. But wait, because the second parable throws a real curveball into the mix. What happens if it's not everyone who messes up, but just a part of the community? The story says if it's just a minority, the king's inner circle, his entourage, it's all good. But, and you got to catch this, if the majority sins, the whole relationship is on shaky ground. It's fundamentally damaged. You see how this just brilliantly lays out the difference in scale, right? An individual slip-up, say, from the high priest, that's a minority problem. The core relationship, it's still solid. But when the whole community sins, that damages the entire dynamic, and the language of the ritual itself reflects that broken connection. Now keep this idea of scale in mind, because it's going to be super important in a minute.
Okay, let's shift gears. We're moving from these big emotional stories to a super specific, kind of tricky legal puzzle, resuming way in, from the entire community right into the mind of a single priest in the middle of an offering. And believe me, this is where it gets really fascinating.
All right, first things first. We need to get our heads around this key term, pigol. Now, this isn't about dropping something or messing up a physical action. Nope. This is all in your head. An offering becomes pigol if the priest, while doing the ritual, thinks about eating it after the allowed time. Think about that. Your intention, your thought alone can completely invalidate the whole thing. It's a pretty wild idea.
So the puzzle we're looking at revolves around this meal offering that has two absolutely crucial parts. First, the priest has to burn a handful of the flour. Then, second, he burns the frankincense. And you need both of those things to happen for the rest of the offering to be okay to eat. One without the other, it's a no-go. The ritual is incomplete.
So you can probably see where this is going. What happens if the priest's intention goes sideways during this two-step process? Well, that question sparks a huge debate between two of the great rabbinic minds.
So on one side, you've got Rabbi Meir. His take is, if the priest has that improper pigul thought during just one of those two steps, doesn't matter which one, the handful or the frankincense, that's it, game over. The whole offering is spoiled. But the other rabbis, they push back. They say, whoa, not so fast. For it to be pigul, that bad intention has to be there for the entire process, for both steps.
So, at first glance, this looks like a straightforward argument, right? Is half enough, or do you need the whole thing? But then, the whole conversation takes this incredible turn. A new question pops up. What if? What if they're both looking at this problem from the wrong angle entirely?
And that, right there, leads us to the solution. It's a total game changer of a principle that flips the whole debate on its head. And it all comes down to the power of that very first thought.
And here it is, the key that unlocks the whole thing. From Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, he drops this profound psychological bombshell. Anyone who performs an action performs it with his initial intent. In other words, when you're doing a series of actions, you're really operating on the intention you had at the very beginning. That first thought, it sets the course for everything else.
Now get this. This idea completely reframes what Rabbi Meir was saying. Maybe his point wasn't that a half intention is good enough. Maybe what he really meant was that the first intention is the one that matters, because that initial thought just carries through and defines the whole rest of the act.
Okay, so let's break down how this actually solves the puzzle. So picture this. The priest is burning the handful of flour, step 1, and he has that wrong Pagul thought. Then, for step 2, burning the frankincense, his mind is blank. He's just going through the motions, on autopilot. Well, according to this new principle, that first bad thought just carries over. It bleeds into the second silent action, and boom, the whole offering is invalid. It's like the first domino in a line. Its direction determines where all the others go.
And what's so powerful is that this works both ways. If the priest's very first thought is a proper one, that pure intention acts like a shield. It protects the whole ritual, even if his mind drifts off later on. It really hammers home this idea that how you start truly defines the entire journey.
And just like that, we've come full circle. Remember how we started with those stories about scale, the difference between one person messing up versus the whole community? Well, now we see how a single thought can have that exact same kind of massive impact, shaping every single action that comes after it. The Talmud, in its genius, connects these two seemingly separate ideas to reveal a really profound psychological truth. That first thought, it just might be the most important one.
So this ancient puzzle leaves us with a question that feels incredibly modern, doesn't it? Think about it. In our own lives, in a project we're starting, a tough conversation we're about to have, or even just in our relationships, if that first thought really does set the course for everything that comes next, how carefully are we choosing it?